our next speaker, we've got Blanche Morrogh, or Morrogh, but Morrogh, kia ora sis. Nei Murray, of course, from Te Arawa, and also from the far north, and is the founder of Kaiora Honey. And what I love about your product, sis, is that you're not only a food producer, you've also taken it that next step into skincare and also health. And today, Blanche is going to talk to us about her biotechnology that she's involved herself in shortly. So, whānau, look, Carol, and the other cool thing about Carol today, I just have to acknowledge, you know, she's so committed to this kaupapa and being sitting there. She actually was at a tangihanga this morning. So, ki tō whānau pane, Carol, ka aroha ki a koe me tō whānau. I just want to acknowledge that you actually took time to be part of this day with us. So thank you, Carol. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Carol. Hopefully you can hear us. And if we bump in with some questions, we will post them to you. The floor is yours.
E mihi ana kia koutou ko tai mai nei I runga te kaupapa o te rā. Now the first thing I've got to do is do a sound check. Can you hear me, Kay Marie?
We can hear you sweet as.
Kia ora koutou. Now Blanche Morrogh, Blanche and I have just discovered that instead of 15 minutes each, I've only got 7. So I'm going to wrap into it because asking Te Hiku woman to state a time is pressing. Pressing. So let me lead in by saying thank you very much. Can't see who's in the crowd there today, but e mihi aroha kia koutou. So we work in something called the Te Hiku Joint Work Program. We are 7 years now out of settlement with 4 of the 5 iwi in Te Hiku settled. Part of that settlement was called a social accord redress, and later on, after 2013, came the big legislation and the changes. It's important to give you that framing there because the social wellbeing accord becomes the conversation upon which every hour, every minute, every day we have conversations with agencies. So the second thing to establish is that we do not do service delivery, nor are we a commissioning agency. So that Sunday is hard for people to get their head around. But our role is to talk to the system and be the voice of whānau in Te Hiku. When things are going well, we ask for more of. When things are going not well, we ask and require the system to make the change. An easy example of that, unfortunately, over COVID was the escalation in the whānau harm. And we called out to MSD and please said work Saturdays and Sundays. And so now they work Saturdays and Sundays alongside the police. That's a very, very simple example. Today, though, I want to just talk to you about a conversation we had in the second week of COVID. And we called these economists, and they're called Burl, and they're from Wellington, and her name is Hill Marie. And we said to Hill Marie, what's going to happen after COVID? And what should we in Te Hiku be looking at? So briefly now going into the second slide. So we're having to use technology a bit differently here today. Going into the second slide, she told us that New Zealand that New Zealand is impacted by an economic shock in 10-year cycles. That bears itself out to be true. Then the further away from the city, like Wellington and Auckland and Christchurch, the longer the recovery takes. So it is true to say that Dargaville and Ngāti Hine will start their recovery before Kaikohe, Kaio and Te Hiku, but it's also fair to say that Ngāti Hine and Dargaville will go into recession earlier than Kaikohe or Dargaville. In Te Hiku, it does take us 10 years to recover, and we're going to give you 30 years of history here. For some sectors in Te Hiku, we only recover to the level we were at 10 years ago. So can we realistically use the word resilience? when really, actually, we're just treading water. And then we just finally come out of an economic shock. The next one hits. But we were back making money 10 years ago, not enjoying what the rest of the country is enjoying. So this next slide shows us, look down at that little yellow, which is August 20. And if history repeats itself and we go all the way through to August 2032, based on history, that's how long it is going to take for the construction and trade sector in Te Hiku to come out of the recession. Now look at the two red dots, to the level they were operating back 10 or 12 years ago. So it's a red flag for us. What is it that we can be doing, if history is correct, to prepare our sector from either recovering faster or not going so deep into the recession? And at the moment, we are buoyant. We are enjoying, the tradies are busy as building homes and doing this and doing the other, because we haven't been spending our money because we can't travel.
True. For those who can.
Now, the light blue one above that shows the farming, the fishing and forestry in Te Hiku. So it shows that round about August 2022, that sector will start to decline, and then it will start to recover again back in August 2032, if history repeats itself. Interesting now, the retail sector is the maroon. And so the retail sector in Kaitaia relies on the primary sector and the tradies and Blanche Co. to pull money into this town so that we can go and spend it at cafes and farmers and the $2 shop. Now the top line, which is the dark blue, that shows the increase in health and social services over the last 10 years as a potential, well, it's a growth sector. That doesn't look like it's going to stop with coronavirus. What that does tell us is that there's immense workforce opportunity in health and in the social service sector. Okay, that's Blanche. Okay, next one. So the story here is to grow Te Hiku is to structure its economy for us to be able to benchmark against the next shock. So COVID is upon us, but we are expecting in about 10 years' time for something else to hit us. So the bottom line, the navy, right at the bottom, in 1990 we had the oil shock. That's when the petrol or diesel went up and petrol prices went up, and they've actually never come down. Then in 1998, you had the Asian financial crisis. Of course, I didn't know all of this. You know, I'm just living day by day. So these were these guys who set out the last 30 years of history for us. And then in 2008, we had the global financial crisis. So the whole world had these things, but we asked ourselves, what does that mean for us in Te Hiku? So the blue shows the unemployment for New Zealand. The maroon shows the unemployment for Northland. The green shows those green lines that Tia's doing now. That shows the unemployment for the Far North, TLA, the Far North District Council. And the purple line shows the unemployment for Te Hiku. So that's 30 years of fact. All right. So when we got Bill to come in and talk to us, we said, what is it that we can be doing to help ourselves and our community over the next 10 years? I agree with the parts that I picked up with Richard and his kōrero this morning. So these are the 4 things that we look at as to how the services and the agencies and the Provincial Growth Fund and Mahitahi Hauora and the DHB and MB and how everybody is supporting our community. We were having a good kōrero this morning with Blanche about the difficulties that we have just writing out application forms continuously for money. So the first is to address market failure. For us in Te Hiku, imperfect collection of information skewers the big decision making that is made in Wellington. That's the big one. No one has data in Te Hiku, on Te Hiku, from an agency lens that can give a good picture of where our standard of living is comparable to the rest of New Zealand. So we have been doing a lot of the work ourselves to learn for ourselves where we are, so that we are in a very good position to tell people, actually, this is what we need versus this is what we've got. B is an enabling environment. Right now, government are using social procurement as the new tool to help businesses. I mean, yep, ka pai, but what is it that we can do to enable our communities to take advantage of the stimulus package, from helping the elderly and the young right through to marakai and cooperatives. So the next one is, I heard Richard talk about this, of course, build capability. We all know that. And so we look now for the types of resources that are coming into our town that will address this area around build capability and to support our SME community. Then if we package all those together, we have long-term solutions rather than short-term gratification on a yearly spend. So we believe that if we go hard at looking at addressing the market failure, which of course is housing and roads and a disjointed delivery of some of the services, we can, things will come right. Now, important in COVID that our community can see and feel the support that is going to them, and that we show that we care for how they are feeling and what they are doing. It's very, very, very important. The other one is to build capability that prepares our people for tomorrow. There's no rocket science in that. Papa Tuanuku has to be restored to her whānau. This comes off Tananua trustee. That's virtually her word for word. And the other one is a balanced recovery of people, place and profit. Now, that's becoming quite trendy as people start to move away from saying that the only way to look at the health of the community is through GDP and how much money. But, for us as Māori and for us as other Indigenous communities in the world, we need to flip that coin.
Yes.
And the next slide to come in, because I didn't put my Fitbit on to tell me my 7 minutes are up. So here's the principles for us, and this is what we're looking for. The principles of we need to be in the recovery decision-making Māori do. This is a pink recession, and we do know that. We do know that women are going to be impacted more than men, and we need to be looking at how those trade training is going to accommodate women who have young children, little things like that. We know that this is a generation disrupted. It is the biggest disruption for our rangatahi, bigger than all the other economic shocks because of the occupations that they no longer have direct access to. And the fourth one is to create a workforce plan. So I'm going to go to this last slide down, which is basically, before I hand it over, is, no, that doesn't even look right. So I'm going to just hand it over. It's a bit out of kilter. So I'm just going to hand it over to my whānau over here now, and she can talk about the fantastic thing she's doing.
Kia ora, Carol.
Kia ora Blanche.
Kia ora whānau, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Lovely to be here with you all. Can they see me? Or?
So over
No
to
worries,
you.
no worries. Well, hopefully this all comes together and the video is in there. But so I'm Blanche Morrogh, Ni Murray from Taitokerau here. So yes, we are a honey company called Kaiora. And we've, off the back of COVID, have started to pivot quite harshly in our response to our global, I guess, decline in sales and positioning in market. And one of the driving forces behind us creating a biotech centre was being able to take our raw ingredient and do formulations through to a secondary product or secondary products. For an example, our primary business is honey production. So we're moving out of honey in a jar into skincare and health and wellness. And the reason why we're moving into skincare and health and wellness sector is mainly because of the trend that you would have seen on Carol's earlier slides around the health sector being one of the growth areas over the next 10 to 20 years. So what we've done is that we've had to look at how we do business, how we're presenting ourselves to not only our domestic customers, but also to our international customers and how they look, whether they're business to consumer or business to distributor or business to business model. And to do that, we realised that we had to understand our product a bit more intimately and to be able to formulate in a way that allows us to scale in the international market, and that's where the biotech comes into place. Kaiora's motto has always been sharing the gift of Mānuka with the world, honey, skincare and health. Through the biotech, we're going to be sloganing more sharing the gift of Taitokerau with the world, and that's mainly so that we can include other sectors such as horticulture, seafood, red meat, and other sectors such and so on. How we collaborate and how we work is part of our mahi, connecting some of this foundation science with some of the larger centres in Otago, Hamilton and Auckland, where we can scale up, or where Whānau can position themselves to scale up and prepare themselves for what that is. For us, we've experienced the hard road, which is the school of hard knocks, and you lose a lot of money and you lose a lot of patience, and you really find out who your true friends are at the end of that process, and who's beside you to take you along this unforgiving journey. But if you can see the light and continue to dig in, there is some amazing philanthropic returns that you receive, not only as yourselves but also as whānau. And what I mean by that is that we really are starting to see now what this means for our whānau here in Taitokerau, to be able to work alongside them and to discover their dreams and aspirations, and to take it from a pencil drawing through to a solid formulation that they can share with their whānau and also prepare to send to prospective buyers, and taking it from there then through to what we call a investment ready, where you understand how you're going to produce your product in mass and who you're going to be moving it to, and maybe having some IP behind you to understand what your product actually delivers in the health sector. So for example, under the biotech, one of our first projects was the Mānuka oil. I know a lot of people would have assumed that it would have been Mānuka honey, but it isn't. We've done a brief market in-depth research to understand something that we have in abundance, and that's Mānuka oil, Mānuka tree. So one of the projects that we've been focusing on is planting the seed for the future. And what that means is that we're identifying plants that will create an economic return as well as the environmental return of our ngāhere. And what the biotech will allow us to do is to identify any bioactivities that will support a skincare range or the health and wellness sector growth over the next 20 years. And Manuka and Kanuka actually have been identified as two large trending areas. Now, a lot of people will say kawakawa is also a plant, and yes, that may be true, but what we have identified through the biotech, through our research, is that kawakawa in some countries has actually been listed as a pharmaceutical product. So therefore, the market entry will be quite costly, and the cost of registration will be out the gate. So that's beyond us. So what we're trying to do is work on projects that are within our reach that give immediate effects back to our landowners, our Māori landowners, that will create jobs and that will create sustainable incomes over the next 20 years. This isn't a flash in the pan model where we can tap ourselves on the back. This is something that we can be proud to say this will be intergenerational, not only for our whānau, but for our iwi, mairano. So that's the purpose of biotech. And connecting our people with further research, further development that will give us additional value from one tree. So a perfect example would be the Manuka strains that we have been cultivating and producing in mass. We've identified 2 strains that will work here in Taitokerau, one eco-sourced, one from out of Taitokerau. And the reason why we would use those 2 trees is because our honey sector has been impacted. Up to 30% in terms of our production is no longer classified as Manuka honey. The one tree that we would look to plant would give us the chemical marker that we are missing in our ngahere, so that when we are producing honey, that 30% is now given back to Taitokerau honey producers, and that same tree also produces the chemical markers that international buyers are looking for from Manuka oil.
Excellent.
So, and the second tree, which is our tree from here in Taitokerau, that we've identified, is for a bioresource matter that works alongside a pest that's up here, which is the tobacco weed, in terms of a natural weed killer.
Tobacco weed.
Yes, yeah. So it's about developing that science. It's about connecting our whānau with these people, so that we're not here to develop your product. It has to be self-driven. You do have to have some fair idea or have some knowledge to bring to the table, but we will definitely help you take it from a concept through to a sample ready project, and then through to an investment pitch project, should you get through that stage. So that's us whānau here in Taitokerau, punching well above our weight. I come from a large whānau myself, so I understand. We grew up in Te Hapua, which is quite rural, and still on today's scale is still quite rural. Moved to Awanui when I think I was 7.
Big metropolis of 325 people.
Hey, it served us well. But my humble beginnings is what drives me to be able to provide a stable platform for other whānau such as ourselves, so they don't have to have the pitfalls and the cake slaps and the wet fishes and the everything that comes with developing something new, something innovative, something different. Because if something's different, you generally get an eyebrow and we're not sure if we want to play in that space. So we just make things look a bit more attractive, give a bit of science, and if we can create IP that international customers are looking to pay for, especially in the health sector, then we will.